Welcome to the UTRGV SARA remote training series. This is our second training series that we've held this summer over Zoom. It's been pretty successful so far. Thanks almost entirely to our great presenters and the great content that we've been putting out. This is a project of UTRGV Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. My name is Colin Kane. I'm the director of the UTRGV Texas Rural Cooperative Center. These presentations are brought to you by the UTRGV Beginning Farmer and Rancher Project and from the Texas Rural Cooperative Center and the Rural Texas Prosperity Project. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Juan Orregosa, who's the director of the UTRGV Beginning Farmer and Rancher Project, where they help beginning farmers, small-scale farmers, and ranchers with organic production methods getting going with a lot of sort of the various topics that beginning farmers need to know about. He's run and managed Terra Preta Farm since 2011. It's a certified organic farm here in the Rio Grande Valley, a diversified vegetable producer and sort of local legend in the farming community. Previously, Juan has worked as a commercial bedding plant producer, as a field supervisor for Pioneer Hybrid, and as a research assistant for the Texas A&M Kingsville Citrus Center in Weslaco. He's got a bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering, and he is a licenciado, Master of Science in Plant Soil Science from University of Texas A&M Kingsville Citrus Center. So, Juan, please take it over, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colin. Welcome, everyone, again. Today, we will be covering a topic that involves a lot of numbers, dates, and calculations so that you can plan your plantings for a continuous harvest. This might be challenging because there is a lot of numbers and dates and spaces, but you will see that if you start using the charts that we're going to be providing, with time, it's going to flow better and it's going to start becoming something natural for you. This presentation, it will really help farmers or gardeners that are planning, market gardeners that are planning to sell at a farmer's market, or especially for a CSA that involves a lot of planning. So we're going to be touching on a lot of information. And because of that, we decided, with the help of our video specialist here at the department, to create a video presentation. So we could add some visual aids for you to make it a little bit more understandable. So today is going to be a video presentation. Like I said, there is a lot of material that we will cover. And we decided also to make the video so it's kind of short. It's going to be 15 minutes because we know, talking about numbers and things, we usually, as farmers or gardeners, we just want to get in the soil and start, doing the practical hands-on. But the video, I think, is very informational. It's going to be, like I said, 15 minutes. So hopefully you can stick around. Hopefully you can pick something out of it. And again, you can always send us an email and we will try to answer all your questions you have. So, okay, let's get started with the presentation. And here it goes. In this presentation, we're going to talk about how to plan or schedule your plantings for your farm or garden. Having a good plan is the first step to have a successful harvest, and we hope the information presented here will be useful and will help you improve your production. There will be a lot of charts, so the materials will be available after the presentation, so you will need to write down all the information. Remember that the more you know, the better you grow. In order to develop a good plan, you need to collect the following information: your growing season, how much product will you need, how much space you have available for growing, and how much space your plant needs. Also, how long your crops take to start producing. We also need to know if your crops do better as transplants or direct seeded. For the crops that will be transplanted, how long they take from seeding until the transplant is ready to be placed in the ground. Do you harvest your crops one time or multiple times? All this information is very valuable for your crop planning and can be used by someone that is just starting to grow or by someone that is planning to sell at a farmer's market or run a CSA. Knowing the seasons of our region is very important because plants have different climate requirements. A crop that is grown with the right climate conditions will grow stronger and produce better yields. This timeline is to give you a better idea of the growing seasons in the RGV. We are very fortunate to have 2 growing seasons for warm weather crops and 1 long growing season for cool weather crops. Here in the valley, we call the fall growing season from mid-August through January. Mid-February through mid-April, we call the spring season. On this timeline, the yellow rectangles represent when we plant warm weather crops, and the blue rectangles represent when we plant cool weather crops. Now let us remember the weather keeps changing every year, so this is not written in stone, but can be used as a guideline. On this slide, we can see crops that do well on warm weather. For example, tomato, pepper, squash, melons, okra, sweet potato, cucumber, corn, beans, eggplant. Here, we can see crops that do well in cool weather. For example, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, beets, carrots, onions, celery, lettuce, collard greens, kale, peas, radish. We often hear that in the Rio Grande Valley, you can grow anything at any time. And that statement might be true. Things might grow anytime, but they don't produce at their best. For example, if we plant beans in the beginning of November, there is a great chance that our plants will grow but won't produce any beans because of low temperatures, high moisture, and cloudy days, which beans don't handle well. Now, this is some basic information, but you can start using it to schedule your plantings in the right growing seasons. The following chart presents the fall planting dates of various crops that can be grown in our area. Each color represents a family of vegetables. All the crops within a vegetable family have common temperature requirements and planting dates. The third column provides the number of days the crops take to mature. In light blue, we have the Brassica family. You'll notice that broccoli, cauliflower, and kohlrabi are all planted from mid-September to December 1st. If you know the vegetable family of your crops, you will have a good idea of its planting times. For example, we could assume cabbage could also be planted at the same time as broccoli, which is true. We will make this chart available to you after the presentation. When planning, it is important to know how much to plant. If you have been growing for some time, you probably know how many pounds of tomato you can sell or consume and how many plants you need to reach your desired yields or harvest. Now, if you don't have any experience and you need a suggestion about how much to plant for your own consumption, you can use this calculator from vegetablegardenerplanner.com, where just by editing the number of people to feed and selecting the crops you want to grow, it will show you the number of plants you need of each crop you select. Now, this is very general because eating habits change from person to person, growing conditions change from state to state, etc. But it gives you a good number to start with. Now, eventually, it is important that each farmer or gardener collect their own data based on their soil, water, varieties, microclimates, etc. For example, it's great to know that last year your 20 tomato plants produced many extra pounds of tomatoes that you happily donated and canned for weeks. This year, I'm sure you plan to only have 10 plants. This season, take note of your average yields and the number of plants you need. Record keeping is time-consuming and sometimes tedious, but it is very important and brings better results to your production in the long run. Determine your available growing area by measuring the size of your plot or raised bed, so you know how much space you have to grow. This will also help in your crop planning. To develop a good plan, you need to collect the growing information for all the crops you want to grow. A quick resource is the seed package. If you buy online, the seed company website should provide all the information you need. Let's read this tomato seed package starting at the bottom left corner. First, it shows the planting depth needed, which is 1/4 inch. The ideal temperature for germination,
70 to 80 degrees. It also includes the days it takes to germinate, plant spacing, days to maturity, which is 80 to 90 days. Here is a list of crops that benefit from starting in trays or pots and later transplanted in the field. Celery, eggplant, collards, kelp, broccoli, kohlrabi, leeks, onion, peppers, and tomato do very well if you grow as transplants. Another factor we need to consider, which is not always provided on your seed package, is seedling time. Seedling time is a period of time from when you plant in trays to the time the seedlings are ready to be transplanted in the ground. Certain crops are recommended to start as seedlings in trays before being planted in the ground to produce better yields. Tomato plants, for example, need to start in trays 4 weeks before being placed in the field. This table shows the approximate seedling time or days required in the greenhouse for various plants. It's also very important to know if our crops produce a single or multiple harvests. In this table, it shows approximate number of harvests or weeks that you can harvest for each crop. You can always stretch the number of harvests, but we will use these numbers for now since that's the number when you get the best quality. Later harvests will be smaller or not as nice. For example, cauliflower can only be harvested once, but broccoli can be harvested 3 times. Our tomato plants will yield top quality fruits for at least 3 weeks. There is a lot of information on seed packages and on these charts that we will provide you. Having all this information in one place for quick reference will speed up your planting calculations. So it is very important to create a crop master list. On this master list, you will include all your crop varieties that you want to grow with their specific recommended planting depth, plant spacing, days to maturity, seedling time if applicable, and the harvesting window or the number of days we are going to be harvesting from that crop. Okay, after creating your crop master list, you are ready to start the calculations. We will use a tomato variety grown in high tonal throughout the fall and winter as an example. On the left, we can see the name of variety and all the information we condense into our crop master list. On the right, we can see what the calculators will tell us, when to start our seedlings and how many times to plant in the season. We will be using free calculators available at the Johnny Seeds website, and we have used these calculators at our farm for years. The first tool we will use is the Target Harvest Date Calculator. This tool calculates your plantings based on set dates when you want to have your products ready. This is especially helpful if you want to have a CSA. For example, you advertise that your first box will be available on November 1st and will include red tomatoes. In the first column, you input your target harvest date, followed by the crop name and days to maturity. In the fourth column is the spring and fall factor. You can add days if you are starting early in the season where it may be too hot or too cold and thereby delay your crops. This is optional. Now on the fifth column, full production factor, you can add more days for crops that the harvest gradually increases. Some crops need a first cut to warm up the plant to start into full production. Again, this is optional. In the next column, days before event the crop will be harvested is useful if you are planning to harvest days in advance before selling or consuming. In the last fillable column, you will input the seedling growing time. Afterwards, you will get your result of when to plant in the seeding date column. You will repeat the process for all the other crops you want to grow. This example calculates for us that we need to start our tomatoes in trays on July 15. Now remember, this is just practice for the calculators. If this tool is too complex for your operations, just start by using the information charts we have available to plant in the right growing season. You can always buy transplants if you are running behind on the planting time. If you want to get the most out of your growing season, for example, you want tomatoes for longer than 3 weeks, or you have a market for a certain crop and the buyer requires a constant supply, you will need to do succession plantings. This means staggering plantings or planting varieties with staggered maturing dates. For example, you could plant tomatoes a couple of times throughout the season, or plant a combination of tomatoes that takes 70 days to mature with a variety that takes 90 days. If you have a small garden, you could simply plan to plant your crops several times during the growing season, separated by your harvest window. For example, if your squash produces fruit for 4 weeks, you will schedule your plantings every 4 weeks to have a constant supply. However, you must consider to stop planting with enough time to prevent cold weather damage to your last planting, or on the flip side, hot weather damage to your cool weather crops. If you are going to be planting a lot of crops and you want to plant in the right growing season, you might consider using the next tool. This is the succession planting calculator. Start by entering your projected fall frost date. It changes every year, so in reality, we don't know when it's gonna be. Last year, it was beginning of November, and other years, we did not have a frost at all. So in this case, we will use November 30th. Next, fill in the varieties you will be using. Then, days to maturity and the interval between successions, which is the harvesting window from your crop master list. For transplanted crops, you will have to add your seedling growing time to the days to maturity. That will be 108 days for our tomatoes. Finally, input your first planting date. This can be the date generated by the target date calculator. Or if you are not using that tool, you can use a date from the planting dates chart. Once you input all the information, the table will calculate the dates we have to plant again to have a continuous harvest, and the final planting date to prevent frost damage. Sometimes your succession date generated will be past your final planting date in the last column. Always refer to your final planting date as your guide. Planting after this date puts your crops at risk. For example, look at the zucchini plantings in the last row. We will plant our squash on the following dates, September 1st and September 29th. We will stop there because the final planting date is October 14. If you will be growing a hot weather crop inside a covered structure like a high tunnel, you could extend the planting times past the final planting dates. Keep in mind also that cold-tolerant crops like kale in row 4 will not be subject to the final planting date rule, but will be affected by the heat. This tool could be used alternatively to determine plantings before it gets super hot by entering May 15 into the frost date box. The previous two calculators can be used for small farmers, but if you are looking to maximize your space and your time and improve your record keeping, then this software is a great tool that you might want to check out. Here is a planting chart generated by Steadfast Farm in Arizona using 10 software. You can see that crop planning can be as simple as planting based on the growing season and as complex as the chart shown here. If you are ready to get planting, here is a list of seed suppliers locally and online. Thank you for joining us, and please contact me with any questions that you may have.
All right, Juan. Thank you very much, sir. All right, that was fantastic. It's one really good part of that is we have. I'm seeing the list of the attendees that we have here. Succession planning, part of what Juan was talking about, it is relevant both for commercial producers but also for backyard gardeners. If you're a commercial producer, you want to make sure that you have a certain product over a certain length of time that you're able to sort of serve that market. But also, if you're a backyard gardener, you would prefer to have sort of some tomatoes over a longer period of time rather than a windfall of tomatoes all at the same time. So it's really, really relevant. Back to you, Juan, for some final notes.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. Yeah, like I said, the information applies to both, commercial farmers, market gardeners, or even small gardeners. They can pick something from here. The charts are available, the three informational charts that we show in the presentation. So if any of you wants a copy of them, please let us know and we can send them your way. And my email is at the bottom with any questions. I know this was a quick and with a lot of information, so please just let us know any questions you have. Also using the 10 software, if you are serious about farming and you're a commercial farmer, let us know and we can help you out developing a crop planning for your farm.
All right, thanks, Juan. That was a fantastic presentation, Juan. I know, in particular, because we're here in the Rio Grande Valley. The growing season is very different in the Rio Grande Valley than it is elsewhere in the country, and it's even different than it is in Central Texas. Not that far away. It's sort of like one of the closer geographic regions to us. It's a very different growing season. So understanding how to sort of plan for that, it's a very important tool, whether you're a commercial producer or a backyard sort of you're trying to feed your family. All right. So Juan, back to your initial presentation about vegetable planning and sort of planning for the season, some of the succession planning and whatnot. We talked initially about how unique the conditions are here in the valley and how they differ from even a few hundred miles north. How adaptable? So you mentioned a number of tools. Some of them were spreadsheets. Some of them were sort of software or apps you can use on your phone. How applicable are those tools for the conditions down here?
Yeah, they're applicable because what those calculators does is they're gonna take the dates that you input. So in that case, we will use the dates that are on the charts, and those charts were designed for the growing conditions here in the valley. So any of the calculators will work. One of them, it talks about the fall frost date. And as I mentioned, some years we don't even have a freeze here in the valley, but we can still use it as a guide to tell us when it's already cold. You know, we have cold nights, cold days, and that's when we don't want to grow outdoors unless we have a high tunnel. We don't want to grow crops during those cool weather months. They can grow, they can survive, yes, but they're not gonna grow under best conditions. So
Right.
they're applicable.
And there were a number of questions, about 13 questions so far, that from people like Jody Goodwin, Karina Perez, Yoli Ramon, Dalia got in there as well. A lot of people are asking about the tools that Juan showed in his presentation and in that video. If you look at that dialog box, the Q&A dialog box, Juan has answered a number of those questions, is taking down people's emails, is sharing his email, and he will share a lot of those free tools. There are some of the tools that are more appropriate for commercial producers. He's provided the links, but a lot of these things are free. And so again, this is an important reminder that if you want, again, follow-up assistance, contact Juan. Make sure to share your email there and reach out to Juan. Feel free to do so. This is a great time to be. We all know it's not everyone really likes going to the grocery store these days. This is a perfect time to be preparing your backyard, preparing your own plot to be growing for your own consumption and possibly selling to others. So Juan, of the tools that you were showing, which are the ones that you find most useful to your own operation, which again is a sort of small scale but a commercial level producer?
Yeah, those two, the ones we talk about, one, the target harvest date, to set a date, let's say we want to start having product on November 1st, and that's what we're going to use as a set date for our plantings. And we also use the succession calculator to continue planting and having a harvest for a long period of time. So those two are the ones I chose to talk about because I think for a commercial farmer are the most important ones. And then we talk about the 10 app. That one has a cost, but it's very, very detailed, record keeping and crop planning. So those three, the link is gonna be available on YouTube, so you can watch the video again. I know all the information came very quick, but look at it again, send us an email, and we can help you out.
All right. Again, so Debbie Cox, who's a local legend on the on producing herbs, has entered in a few questions. I think we addressed one of them before about the planting guides. A lot of planting guides that are relevant for the rest of Texas, a lot of times are not specific to the valley. So again, just to sort of reiterate what Juan has already said, it is possible to work with some of these calculators and tools to plan for production in your backyard or commercial production for South Texas, for the valley. So Debbie's also asking, in the home garden, we have gotten tomatoes most years in the fall garden, but she knows that weather has a lot to do with that, growing in hoop houses. So is for some of these growing calculators or whatnot, is it possible to sort of, do you have to adjust any of the settings to make sure that it's sort of relevant to the growing season down here, or it's pretty easily adaptable?
No, over there you have to not adjust the date, but you need to consider that if it's in a high tonal, that last fall planting date doesn't really apply, because you can continue growing and planting because it's gonna be covered. So yeah, those tools were developed up north. You know, they have a fall frost date, and when the freezes come up there, that's it. And that's why they are very emphasizing on the freeze. But here, if we're gonna grow on the high tonal, we can dismiss and just use the planting dates and dismiss the last fall planting date, because we can continue planting.
Again, these presentations have been brought to you by UTRGV Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement, and some of our sponsored projects, the Beginning Farmer Rancher Project and Texas Rural Cooperative Center. We will be holding another training series in probably a month or so. We're going to try to probably space it out every 30 days or maybe 45 days, maybe a little bit longer. All of these trainings, all of these are being recorded as videos, and they will live on the UTRGV SARA YouTube channel. So go onto YouTube, search for UTRGV Center for Sustainable Agriculture and Rural Advancement. A little sort of circle will pop up. That's our channel. Click on it, go on there, subscribe, and you'll get all the videos for these trainings. So if you missed a part, you can go back and get it. And again, if you want any of the tools that Juan was talking about, because a lot of those are digital, a lot of those are sort of spreadsheets, please reach out to Juan. If you have any questions, follow-up questions about your particular sort of production, what's going to be coming in the coming year for you, contact Cruz. I want to thank everyone who's shown up for this. We've had a really good turnout and really good feedback and interaction, and we really value your time, and just want to thank you so much for coming out. And also want to really thank our ag experts, Cruz Salinas, Juan Regosa. They're fantastic. They're fantastic technical assistance providers here at the university, and please take advantage of their availability to answer questions on this. So Cruz and Juan, I just want to say thanks. And for everyone, seems like we have a really local audience here. So everyone here in the Valley, thanks for tuning in, and everyone stay safe out there. And we hope to see you next time.